Okay, I think everything should be good here. So we are back again. We're in process of trying to paint up a squadron of Hellblasters led by a lieutenant. This is going to be in the Dark Angels scheme. And so we got quite a few things to work towards. I think I do want to focus on getting this lieutenant done as well as maybe 2 more Hellblasters. So we got these 2 guys back here. And then we can try to see what the scheme will look like for the rest of these guys. So we did have 1 guy in progress here, although I necessarily don't exactly like, because I want to go straight into one of the over green paint, if that makes much sense there. But we do have to go over that once more. I think we'll redo it from the beginning for this guy, and then we'll try and see. Although we can't experiment just going off of that. So, for example, normally with this current lineup of paints, we do a couple of things. First off, we did start off with a nice base of Caliban green to begin with as the underside paint to begin with for these guys. And then the lighter green that you see is actually AK's dark green, which will actually show up as the main color as you see. And then all the edge highlights will be done with this light green from AK's as well. So we use those 3 in tandem together to be able to create the main armor for these guys. A few silver areas for the main gun and red on the body of the plasma gun. But overall, that's the very basic scheme that we're working with right now. So I want to see what will it look like. Hopefully it might show on the camera what the difference is as to why we use Caliban green to start with. And so we'll be going straight up with some dark green from AK's immediately onto the primed model. So I'll give this a couple layers because it does take a few of them to build up to be able to get the full color to show. So we'll just get to see what that looks like on its own. Let's see, I need my number 2 brush. Let me get my brushes set up 2 here. 0, 2, and 1. Okay. So with our number 2 brush here, which is going to be the Golden Maples sable here. So these are real hairs, if that is the best way to describe it. I got 2 frays already, sadly. I need a knife here. Let's see if I can actually take care of that real quick. Frayed hairs, they've got to go, sadly, as it does get in the way of the painting process here. And also, you know what? This is getting on my nerves. I have my knife set here off to the side, and the magnetic strip that holds all these pieces together are not getting stuck to the place where they're supposed to be. So I'm just gonna super glue that real quick because this is indeed getting a bit out of hand as to it not sticking there properly. See what I actually need to do. A little bit of a delay here, but I do need to make sure that this magnetic strip stops bothering me. So when I bought this case, it just instantly slipped out, so that's a bit unfortunate. But we'll do this and we'll start to reattach these guys where they need to belong. See, that vertical piece is already on my current knife. We just need to match them up one at a time, but it's a bit odd how some of these don't exactly fit the way they're supposed to. I think this one's will go here, yeah. That'll go there for now. No. Can't seem to find a spot for you. Interesting. Is it the wrong order? Sure. Can't seem to find a home for this guy. It's supposed to be going from the... Wow. Is there something that I'm missing here? It's a little bit weird how we can't seem to find the right homes for all these blades. It looks like a near perfect fit. And I know this one perfectly fits there. And yet somehow, this guy, that's too wide for him. And yet somehow it's also too short for him. And this guy's got nowhere to go except for up there. Wow, this is like a puzzle I can't seem to find a proper answer to. But it might be because I swapped out some of these blades earlier, but whatever. So long as it can stick, it'll be fine. And I also remember that the main blade needs to go back. Okay, that's a little bit of a detour, but let's go ahead and get started with back to our regularly scheduled programming of actually painting up a model. So with this guy right here, so we're looking to see if we jump straight to the dark green that I just put some on my wet palette, if that can help us get started with this guy here. So we do need a new coat over his main armor pieces, as there are some spots that are lacking the pigment on them. I have a lingering feeling we can be very brave with this model and actually try something that's very interesting I haven't done before. But we'll get to it in just a second here. Because what if we can actually look at the lighting effect for the same exact model and get a little bit of theory about lighting in the meantime as well. That sounds like quite a bit of fun. So let's see here. I'm gonna go to this power pack, but we're actually only gonna paint up to this part, and that second exhaust port we're gonna leave unpainted for just a little bit longer. Because although I do see already that we have quite a bit going on because this first layer of dark green, and we want to try something so that way we can actually get the full effects on a singular model instead of having to compare two side by side. And sadly, the camera might not do the best job of picking up all the differences. But for now, let's go ahead and paint this one side all in this AK's dark green to get started with. And then we'll try this one thing that I like to try to cook up for this guy. Let's really make sure we get an even spread all the way throughout this guy. Okay. Cool. So we effectively have half. You know what? Let's get the helmet too. Let's go this side of the helmet. So we're gonna have to be a little bit brave today, but I think we can turn what I would first call a mishap into hopefully an interesting effect of sorts. All right. So look at this. His top part of his upper body's armor here. Okay. So this will be all in straight up dark green on one side. But again, to be a bit brave here, is that we will go back and let's do the other half actually with that Caliban green underside. So I want to see what the difference looks like because we've been doing Caliban green undersides all the way up to this point. So let's see what the difference is going to really look like. So as stated before, we normally use Caliban green as the first coat for these guys. Always make sure we get a good shake on our paint pots here. So we have some Caliban green we need to spread across our wet palette here. See, I don't necessarily like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I have to figure out some camera settings, but the wet palette reflects all the light that gets shown onto it. Okay, so with the Caliban green, let's now start going over this part of this Space Marine's body, and then we'll come back over with some dark green yet again. Take some of that. Get some last bits onto his helmet here. Okay, we go on this exhaust port on his power pack as well. And let's touch up a second time onto his shoulder pad. Okay, so let's see if the camera can focus on this guy as his paint is drying, which the camera does not wish to focus on him at all. But the idea here is that we are looking to see how we can get a bit of an effect going on with some of the lighter and darker sides of this model. Okay, well, let's see here. I want to get a few more touches of Caliban green on some sides because we did run out, and that's great. Everything's entirely blurry on this camera, dude. I think we'll have to figure out something else for this guy. But nonetheless, though, we'll have to live with what we got. So usually my experience of working with Citadel paints, we do need to get a couple of layers to be slapped on these guys because one layer usually ends up as a kind of spotty, so another one to go over it will help get the colors to come out evenly across the surface of the model that you're painting. Even though this is the Caliban green is a base paint, and it is more or less the thickest consistency that Citadel offers, it does need a couple of coats if you do want to make things look properly applied for this model. Although, to be frank about it, this is partially why it's easier to layer with Citadel paints, because you can go across with your next color a lot easier, no doubt. Oh, that actually reminds me. Now that I'm going over this guy, I kind of disregarded the angel wings of my completed guys beforehand. So looks like I have something to go back over again with older models that I painted last time we were live. But that does add a little bit extra step that we need to ensure that we've complete. Okay. These are starting to come together a bit better now. So you can see that there are some darker areas to the sky as well as lighter ones. But in either case, we're going to have to wait for this guy to dry before we apply our next layer of dark green, which if we can switch back over to my zero brush, which is the much thinner one, we can go and start applying. Let's see, I want some of maybe some of this AK's grimy gray here. So this color will help us get started with some whites onto the angel wings at the chest of each of these guys. So let me get my number 0 brush. Okay. So again, the idea here is that there is a specific area right here. Can only see it really from this side, not so much this side because the gun is right there. But there are obviously the angel wings signifying the, well, I mean, technically there's the angels of death because these are not specifically Dark Angels models. But because they are angels of death nonetheless in terms of the Imperium, they do require the angel wings to be painted as such. And hopefully, so I like having the wings kind of on this off-white color. And then we can come back with some Arctic Gem blue. I still have some left over from the other day. And that could be used on the tips of the wings as a bit of a highlight. So I do need this light to come over. You know what? This light needs to shift over a bit more. See, getting a little bit scuffed here. My wet palette needs to go find a home somewhere else. Desk is a little bit cluttered at this time, but we'll find a home for this guy soon enough. Okay. All right. That was a little bit of a jostling around, but we now can get into this angle of the underside of this guy and get some more of that white onto the wings there. Same thing for this guy. Let's see, can we get to, there's a very small part back here. should be good enough. We'll give it the blue highlights that they need, and that should be about it for that last detail on their chest. Let's come back over here. Just want to really make sure that all the feathers are painted over. Sure. That's about all the areas I can dexterously get into without messing everything up. Okay. Along with that, I think we can get away. We'll try it on one again. The whole purpose is we can be a bit brave with some of our things here. So if we go get some old gold as part of the paint, so we want to try to put that on the outer borders of each of these guys' shoulder pads. Perhaps we can get something desired for a nice accent color on some of these guys. Let's go around here. Because this is the same accent color that I would give onto my inner circle companions on their shoulder pads. So hopefully this can combine nicely with the current edge highlighting that we've done so far. Okay, that's one of the shoulder pads done. Okay. Keep going to the underside of his shoulder pad. And there. So that gives him a little bit of a pop on his shoulder pads. Just a little bit of gold there. That works out. And now, let's see. I do have some Arctic Gem left over, so which is a nice light blue. I personally do like that as a good way to do some tip highlights on the wings. So let's see if we can find where that bottle is. So I currently use Warpaint's Arctic Gem just as a way to get started with. We have some left over on my palette. So now on the wings specifically, so it's kind of hard to see because his chest is mainly covered by his gun. But onto the wings themselves, if we go from the outer edge and a bit downwards, if my hands can stop shaking like that, we can get just a little bit on the tips of the wings. That little blue gives the slightest bit of a pop to the wings on top of the white that's already there. Again, it's not really going to be much. It's just one little detail that I usually like to add to the wings of the Space Marines themselves. So we'll take that. It's not exactly easiest picked up on the camera, but with that, that should be just about all the bases covered for some of the models that we started the other day. So you got 10 of these guys that we're currently working on, and it's going to be the same for this guy here. So this guy is the second model we finished the other day, and we're just going to go ahead and add that little bit of blue again. We applied the white to the wings on his chest. So just the tiniest bit of blue on the outer edges here. And that should about do it. Really don't need much at all. Like that. Okay. And now we go back to doing gold on his shoulder pads. So we can do this for this guy and then our third guy as well. And we can go back to finishing Mr. Number 3. So hopefully this is a pretty okay process to get going through these guys so far. Okay. Very good. And let's go to the underside of this shoulder pad. All right, that takes care of the first one there. And let's transition over to the next one. Okay. Let's both shoulder pads done for Mr. Guy number 2. That works out. And let's go to Mr. number 3, whose paint has finally dried that we were working on just a few minutes earlier. Sure. We'll accept that as his 2 shoulder pads for this guy. So now we can finally go over to the next part of this guy's model. Let's see if we can find any noticeable difference once we go over all the dark areas of this guy's armor with that dark green from AKs that we were using. So again, the lighter green that you see mostly on the previous models is going to be AK's dark green as the overcoat for the armor for these guys. So let me switch back over. Let's actually go to a number 1. If my good old habit of losing all of the brush caps can stop. We're doing that again. Infamously, I just seem to make a great job of not finding wherever in the world these brush caps go. Normally do put them back where the other brushes are. But this time, it seems like this one will evade me for a few more minutes longer. Well, I do have one backup that I'm gonna have to use, even though it doesn't exactly even fit. Never mind. Huh. Maybe I ought to keep brush caps into my pockets, huh? That way it won't actually be thrown away from me. Like what? All right, well, looks like I need to yoink one from a different brush entirely, but they don't fit. Have I cooked myself with losing a brush cap? Yeah, I might have. Well, we're just going to need to keep this one on hold then, as we need to find that later on. Okay. Like, I take them off, we throw them off to the side somewhere, and then they're nowhere to be seen. I thought I'd learned my lesson by now, but apparently not. Okay. Let's transition to the number 1 brush here. And let's go to AK's dark green. So we can get started back here. So when we get to do this technique here with something like this, we can intentionally leave all the crevices untouched for where the that Caliban green that we first layered on is going to keep that darker color into the crevices, which should naturally, of course, be darker as well, as it will be within the recesses and shadows of the armor itself. So there's one benefit of doing multiple layers like this, and of course the lighter green will stand out against that darker green that we first layered on there. Let's see here. All right, we'll just keep working on this second layer of that dark green. Just for a few more other spots, and then we'll have to swap the colors over to things like silver and such on some parts that need that. I'll go to his arms here. I got one last spot here that was missed. Okay. So while that layer is drying, we can go ahead and get to doing some silvers before we go to the main portion of edge highlighting all of this guy's armor plates. So we have AK's silver back here that is used quite often for a lot of the silver parts, which mostly will be the upper part of this guy's gun, the edge, and the main cable that connects to the back side of this Hellblaster. So just get some silver out onto the wet palette there. And let's get this going. So there's this whole section that's going to be in silver, and an extra liberty that I like to do later on after this silver dries is I like to use a bit of a blue contrast paint to use at the end of the nozzle to show that this gun is just about ready to fire. Pretty simple effect, but I think it works for what it does for a model like this. Just work our way around with this guy. And take care of this part as well. We'll take that for now, and we'll go over some other parts to secure the edge on that. Let's go to the upper portion of this guy's gun. Okay, that works for most of the silver areas to this model. And then let's go over to his belt here. Let's get that one easy coat of silver as well. Let's see. I'm going to work at these angles so we can reach the entire side of the belt. And that should be about it for that. Just got this underside to his connector here to his backpack. Okay. All right, that's mostly the silver areas to this guy. And so now it will be time to get to one of the main portions to this model, which is going to be the edge highlights across all the panels of his armor. For us, that's going to mean that we will need to switch over to our zero brush again. And start over with, this time we'll be using, I still have some left over from our last painting session, but if I can find that bottle of paint to show, where is it? Didn't drop down, did it? Huh. Well, that is quite something. That bottle just escapes. Oh yeah, it can drop to the floor. Huh. Well, nonetheless, though, we have, it's going to be AK's light green that I showcased earlier somehow, and it's all gone. And we've got our first, let me double check. You're gonna open this up here. Unless, there's really no way to do that from here. Oh, it's not possible from this side. Oh well. Either way, we'll be using some of this light green, and we'll be going around applying an edge highlight across all the panels of his armor, starting with something like this. And that's really watered down. I really just went over it. Okay, so we're looking for an effect something like this to give those armor pieces a bit more depth to the model itself. Huh. The light green that I have is getting currently quite watered down, and I, for the life of me, cannot find that bottle. It's hard to miss. It's a nice upright squeeze bottle of paint, and yet it cannot be found. Because I am I am legally blind. It's literally on the table. But yes, we were using this light green to get this edge highlighting going, and I think I will have to add a little bit more of this paint into our light palette. So it can stop being so watery and easy to apply onto this model. My hand is not there in front of the camera like that, but we'll get edge highlights like this. All throughout the model. We'll just take this edge highlighting one step at a time, as all the depth will come out once this starts coming into form. We can go over to his helmet now. Follow this little contour that's on the top of the head. And then carry that through off to the side. Okay, pretty nice. Let's keep going here. So got this little contour right there. pull that down over to where the eyes are for this guy. Okay, and at the top of his body armor piece as well. All right, pretty good. And then we can go over to his, this is going to be his left arm here. Okay. If you follow all the contours of his arm, it should be able to pop out a lot nicer. Okay. And so we can get a lot more definition to his arm now thanks to those highlights. And we keep moving across here. To the back of his backpack here. And then on this piece of armor as well. And Twitch goes through our mandatory disconnect as always. And it reconnects, and we gotta do that all over again on Twitch. YouTube is obviously completely fine as always. Unbroken streams where that one is, but not for Twitch. There's a little spot hard to get. That's hard to get on the backside of his left leg. But with a couple more spots, we should be able to get this guy taken care of on the edge like that. Okay, let's go get underneath his left thigh there. Okay. And let's take care of this armor plate. All right, and that should do it for the edge highlights to this guy. Oh, no. It's always when we give that second look over when you realize just how many spots that you've missed so far. And that's more like it. So we got the edge highlights done on this guy. So now let's work on his main gun here. Let's just take a few steps here on the actual plasma weapon of these Hellblasters. So what I'd like to do is that I like to get started with, if we switch over to our number 1 brush, once this is finally fully cleared. The number 1 brush, I like to get started with some, here's some Arctic Gem, which is a nice light blue that can be used as the main part of the plasma gun that you can see where the light is coming from. So it just takes a little bit here. Now we actually don't have to be 100% accurate with where our paint is lining up, because once this dries, we'll be going over with some blue contrast that will easily fill in the gaps for this gun here. And also, we actually don't have to be 100% accurate to that area as well around the gun, because that also will actually add on to the bit of reflection that we get, because we're obviously trying to make the effect that this plasma gun is emitting light when it's being charged up, and so we're hoping to make sure that that is the case for something like this. Okay, just gotta make sure we get good coverage, and we'll come back once this paint is all dried up. All right, that's a good first start. We'll come back with the contrast, and we go back over with Arctic Gem once more once that contrast is dried. But in the meantime now, if we can bust out some Mephiston Red, if the camera can focus on that, it's literally right in front of you, there you go. With some Mephiston Red here, we can get to the main body of the plasma gun and work off of that. So let's just scoop some out. A bit more. So this way, we can have a good contrast to all the blues that are going on the gun, and then a nice place to stop the silver on some of the accent parts of the gun that we're working on here. So let's just go off with the first layer here. So we're going to go all the way across from where the hand connects to the gun all the way up to the plasma source up there at the top. This would take a couple of layers, as this Mephiston Red is a Citadel paint. That's usually as what is required for paints like that. But afterwards we can work with a little bit more of edge highlighting as well, hopefully with the red areas, just so we can get a good depth between where the red starts and the silver ends for this plasma gun. A few steps, not so difficult, but still requires us to pay attention to the details here for a model like this. Because for something like this, you normally see all the gaps of where the paint hasn't applied yet. So that does help out with knowing where to go on the second layer onwards for something like this. Okay. Take care of that. Okay, and now we go for this under handle here. If you guys haven't noticed, there's a bug flying around in this room, but I don't really have any means of getting rid of him just yet. We'll see if that bug will flap around in front of the camera anytime soon. Unfortunately, the bug zapper is somewhere else around the house right now. Let me double check here. I guess we weren't as consistent with the red and the silver, but we'll just go along with this for now. So we'll cover up. Interesting. Maybe if we cover this part up, that means we get all of you as well as that last part, back panel of the gun. That will meet up with the silver part of it. Something like that. Okay. Let's make sure we cover this up entirely as it should. These extra layers are very important if you really want this red to stand out a bit more. Oop, and do the classic drop of the model. But nonetheless, we still need these extra layers of red so that it can stand out against the silver and the extra blue we're going to apply to this model here. Okay, good. So that is that first section done. Now, let's go over, and I do need to swap over to one of my throwaway synthetic brushes to then apply some contrast paint, as it does tint up the bristles for sure. So we have here, this is going to be some Talisar blue here that has lovely spilled all over the pot earlier, but this is exactly what we need nonetheless. When we move over to, I do a great job of just not knowing where the brushes that I need are. I don't know if that's just a me problem or I'm just that disorganized. Because like my number 2 synthetic brush was on the right side of my desk, and now it's not there anymore. Which is now it's here. Okay, perfect. So with the nice and very well loved number 2 synthetic brush, we're going to apply a little bit of contrast paint to the plasma area of that gun. So, as stated previously, the contrast will be able to get inside of all the crevices and apply a very deep and brilliant blue layer on top of that lighter Arctic Gem blue that we have started this plasma source from. So you can go across all of it. Ensure that all the crevices underneath are filled. That's what the main purpose of this is for, as contrast paints are a lot more ink than paint. It will be able to get inside, given its consistency, deeper into the crevices of this guy. Very good. So that is the way that it looks currently in this step, with that much deeper Talisar blue coating over the Arctic Gem. But what brings us to life now is that we can actually go once again. So once that dries, we'll go back again with more Arctic Gem so that we'll be able to work on that further and apply our last highlights to that source. So because we did spend some time on that, and I just flung that brush cap. Okay. So because we gave that time to dry, we can go back once more with more of that Mephiston red that we applied earlier. Again, maybe even a third layer might be important to make sure that all the red stands out where it needs to be. Just looking at the areas that need another touch-up of this red. Okay. Very good. All right, So that just about completes the red part of the gun, but now we're going to focus all of our efforts in finishing up the plasma source on the top of the Hellblaster. So what we're actually going to go first is that, let's still at number 1, we're going to go with some of the Arctic Gem that we have earlier, that really light blue that's underneath, and we're going to reapply it back on top. Now, we're going to try to localize this towards the center of this guy, and again, make sure that we just only go over the actual upper part of the ridges, as we don't want to get into the crevices where the contrast paint that we applied earlier is lying in. So that way we get a good back and forth of the darker underneath, lighter on top, just like this. So that is the first step to this. And then to really cap everything off, let me get back to my zero brush, and we will be able to do, with a little bit of white, go over some parts of the sky. So let's prep up the zero brush here, and with a little bit of white that we have saved up earlier, we will then go over the top of some of these. Just like that. There you go. So this hopefully should draw us a good gradient of the hottest in the center and then moving out around. And lastly, we can be a little bit brave here with a little bit more Arctic Gem, and we can draw a bit of an outline of this thing practically glowing with that color onto the actual gun itself. So obviously, this being a very high light emitting source here, we should try to expect that. We can go around here and apply this Arctic Gem all the way around the outside of the gun. To give off the feel that this is indeed glowing very bright and very hot, as the plasma guns do in the lore of 40K. It does require a little bit of bravery, as it does seem like we're kind of getting in the way of all that we worked on before, but it is necessary for us to really try to bring this piece to life here, at least in the best way that we currently can. Yeah, so that's kind of the idea now. With more watered down Arctic Gem, we can get a simple glow effect, but slightly effective towards these models here. All right, lastly, what I want to do that I can't forget, we're still on our number 0, is that we can go in here with some more Mephiston Red, and lastly, cover up the, not cover, but paint up the eyes of this model here. Just gonna roll some onto the tip of the brush and inside of the eyes of these guys. Let's give that slightest touch, if my hand can stop shaking. There you go, into the eyes of the helmets of these guys. Okay. Now, as we've done earlier with other pieces, one of the last details that we like to do is go over with some of this whitish gray that we have. to apply some paint over to the chest area of this Space Marine, where you can see there's some angel wings there. If I can get the light to focus on this properly. You first start with some white onto the feather areas of this guy. Okay. Very good. Let's wait for that to dry, and then we'll come back and we'll throw some Arctic Gem on the tips of those wings to give it that slightest bit of depth, and that will be about it. A bit on that tip. Good on that side, and that should be about it. Okay, and that will complete our third Hellblaster out of the 10. Now, I am feeling a little bit frisky, and we should try, because I do have one lieutenant that is leading this squad of 10 currently, and we should have this guy painted up, because I think we have a lot we can work on with a lieutenant leading his squad of 10 Hellblasters. So I think the same ideas are still going to apply to all of his armor pieces. We'll start with some dark Caliban green and then layer it on top with some dark green from AKs to give it that pop. Do the same panel lining. We got a bit of few of things to do, like with this little piece attached to his shoulder blade. We have a plasma pistol, and also we have a robotic hand. That's definitely one thing that's a bit different. I remember when I built this a little while ago, we got a couple ornaments on his belt we need to keep track of as well, and this little piece of cloth, which I think will work best, kind of similar to my Inner Circle companions. If we got some pink onto that, that could contrast really nicely against the green of his armor. So without further ado, let's get to it. So let's go ahead and grab some of this. Again, Caliban green is a great base to get started off, as a dark green that we get to work off of. So we're going to need to scoop some out onto my wet palette here. Spread that around, get a bit more. See, gonna readjust this light here, and let's work on the next shoulder pad. Try to make sure we dodge that extra plating that we have on that shoulder pad to this lieutenant. Very nice. We're just starting off with a nice, generous first coat of this Caliban green. We'll come back later with some of the lighter greens after the fact. We can't try to focus on getting into the crevices of this because those are the spots that will most likely remain once we're done with our second layer of paint. Okay. Okay, we keep going with this first undercoat of that Caliban green. Just make sure we get all the spots that are metal plates because this is a lieutenant now. He's going to have a lot more things like decorations, ribbons, and other pieces of accessories which we do not wish to cover over. So we have a lot of area to cover. We also need to be very careful about that area because we don't want to mark up places that won't be having any of that green color on them in the first place. Okay. Okay. This part of his right hand here. And let's see. I wonder how we can handle his power fist here. Try to think about this for a quick second. Because normally people do like doing things like a red power fist or whatever, but I'm kind of more inclined to see if we can get away with, like, if anything, like a silver power fist, and then we can use some contrast paints to help out with some effects on that. So, you know what? Let's go ahead and do that. What good is a painting without the bravery, is what I like to say. So let's go ahead and leave that fist alone for now. We'll get this extra plate on his left side of his body, which is quite large than what I remember from other guys, is extra plates here. But nonetheless, we'll apply the same Caliban green to this guy. And then on his chest, and let's avoid obviously the wings of the Imperium logo on them. So we can quickly apply the extra bit. I'll make sure that it's completely uniform on this Caliban coat if possible. But for the most part, it doesn't have to be either, because that could help out with the way that the extra layers will go on top. So usually if I see anything that's really, really outrageously badly coated, because the way that this interaction goes, then we'll add some more, but if not, we'll just keep going. Again, there'll be more coats of brighter green that's going to be on this guy, so it's not necessarily the end of the world if this first coat isn't completely uniform all the way through all the affected areas. I think what we could get away with is just a little touch of water here, and we can really get into the crevice. Although we have another Imperium symbol, the skull and the wings, on his forehead that we should try to avoid. That will be a completely different color when it comes time to paint that. Okay, now we got this whole section here where the armor ends before his prosthetic hand begins. I'll make sure that that's still consistent with the Caliban green first. All right, nice. I think that's enough to work with that for now. And we'll wait for that to dry. Let's see. So silver-wise, we need his fist, and we need his hand, and of course some parts of his plasma pistol. That will be very similar in design to the plasma rifles of the Hellblasters that we currently have. So let's switch over to my number 1 brush for this guy, and let's start applying some silver. So here's some silver left over from our previous painting of some of the Hellblasters, and first off we want to make sure we get a good coat on his prosthetic hand here. Okay, that's the prosthetic hand taken care of. Let's move on over to this section of the plasma pistol. Okay. All right, that takes care of the silver parts in that section. And as I stated earlier, let's be a bit brave and try to silver up his Power Fist. And let's see if we can get some interesting effects going along. I've done so earlier with some things like my Inner Circle Companions and that sort. So we'll see if we can do it again for a much wider object like a fist than a single sword. We'll get this silvery texture all across the Power Fist. And in my mind, with a couple of tricks with some contrast and maybe some layer paints as well, we just might be able to get something to work out for this guy. Be sure to avoid the Imperium signal, insignia, and wings. Okay, we can go with this for now. That works for all the parts that are silvered up for him. And we got some ideas once all that silver dries to see if we can layer on some nice effects and color changey business on that fist. Now, I think we can go, because all the Caliban green dried, we can go straight into the dark green. So go back to our number 2 brush. And let's start applying some more of that. That's the light green. Yeah, because I almost, actually, well, let's see. I do have some that was left over from the previous painting session here. Let's check that consistency. So here's some dark green that's gonna go right on top of here. and it already adds a bit more if the camera can pick it up. The difference in color already. So we can easily just go ahead and go over this again. As stated numerous times, that we, with this dark green outer layer on top of the dark Caliban green, is that we don't need to worry about the crevices. That was already taken care of by the Caliban green. So all the faces of the armor plates that are raised up towards the light, that should catch that lighter color. So our prep work is coming together, and hopefully we can get a much nicer, lighter color with a little bit of depth to help out with this guy. And we'll see. This consistency of this dark green is a little bit different than what I normally use, so we'll see if we can need to do multiple layers of this as we keep moving our way forward here. The consistency of this is a bit too watery for my liking, so reset the brush and let's go. I have to dollop down another dark green from the bottle here to help with that. Always give our bottles a good shake to get the consistency right on the paint. So again, we're using AK's dark green to add to the coloring of this Lieutenant model here. So let's see if this can help this along. So this section of it, yep, that's more like it already. You can easily see these armor plates are coming to life with this lighter color. It's kind of funny. AK calls it dark green, but it is, I mean, obviously compared to the very dulled Caliban green, it looks so much brighter. Okay, I think the edges should be taken care of by the edge highlights that we're going to get to later on. So we'll just keep going to the next section that we need to cover with this lighter green. I'm wondering if it will come to the fact that I should put a decal on his shoulder pad. I'm not really much of a decal kind of guy, so maybe not. But we can add a bit more flavor to him I don't know if we'll figure something out for his shoulder pads, because as is the case with anything 40K, the leaders are the ones, of course, with the most decorations on the model. Okay, very good. All right. Okay. Let's make sure we don't get into the area of the wings of this guy. looks like we have a couple of extra layers to put on some of this. This is a little patchy on some areas of his leg. Okay. Still keep finding all these patchy spots from where we applied that second layer of green. But then again, having it, we don't need perfect consistency on our paint either. It does add a bit more realism to the weathering of pieces of armor, especially for Space Marines who fight basically 24/7. Let's get to his helmet, and that will be it for this second layer of green onto this guy's armor. Okay. All right, so that is all of the greens for this guy's armor. Now we'll wait for that to dry because we have a whole section to dedicate to things like edge highlighting for his armor. Let's do what I have done for some inner circle companions as we swap back over to my number 1 brush, where we can go focus on this part of his little piece of cloth here that's attached to his belt. There's some very special effect, but the idea here is that we start with the nice layer of, that's corn red. Whoops, that's not the right color. It's gonna be Screamer Pink on top, but even before that, why can't I find it? Right here. Yep, Gal Vorbak Red is a nice deep red, almost like purplish red color. But if we go on top of it with some Screamer Pink, that should help out with adding a bit more depth to this model. So, wow, it's really watery. We gotta really shake this guy up. Okay. Get a nice even spread of the paint onto the brush. So got this nice first layer. Okay, and then we can make sure we coat the back side as well for all the parts that are visible anyways. Okay, that's a good first layer, and then we'll come back with some Screamer Pink on top of it, which will really give it some more pop. So that will conclude it for that part as we wait for that paint to dry. And now for one of the main parts of this guy to really get everything going. So I'll return back to my zero brush, and now we will do some good old edge highlighting across the entire all the armor plates for this guy. Still plenty left, so we are going to use some of this light green from AKs to be able to get that going. I still have plenty on my wet palette to work with. So let's see here. I always like to start with the edge of his shoulder pads, just to get the first feel of how to work this brush. Okay. Let's see here. All right, that's the first shoulder pad highlighter right there. I'm doing all this to hopefully work on that depth for an armor that's very similarly colored all the way throughout. Okay, let's go to his power pack here and let's start working on some of the edges on that. Okay. What? Oh, jeez. I flung my brush across the wet palette and now it's got paint all over the body of the brush. That's just perfect. And wipe that down real quick. Okay, crisis averted. Didn't mess up the actual. Well, let's really make sure. Don't want any of these bristles to actually get paint on the end tips because that's exactly how you get it all crusted over. Okay. Okay, I was quite meticulous, but we did get all the edge highlights done for this guy. Okay, so let's see how we can do for. So we're going to return back to his little piece of cloth right here for his on tied to his belt, and you. There you go. So we have Citadel's Screamer Pink over here, and this will give a nice overcolor to his little piece of cloth right there. So let's get to working on some of that. So I think the idea is that we can go top down and we can really get some highlights going onto the edges. Of the raised portions of this piece of cloth. The idea being that for the parts that are underneath, it won't show as brightly instead. There you go. Something like this. Again, once that paint dries, we can take a closer look to see if that really passes as a believable lighter on top, darker underneath kind of look for that. So make sure we get all that underside right there. Okay, good. Hopefully that should hold. That's really all there's to it. Just a little bit extra detail onto that could really make it stand out a bit more. Okay, first let's go ahead, and we got a couple of spots that need a bit more gold. I still have some gold left over. Okay, so we want some gold. I believe it should be, because we got one purity seal over there. Now, obviously, we need gold onto this little halo on the back. We have one key in a little artifact spot right there. I think if we gold up that skull, actually, that can actually help out. So the skull that's on his belt, if that's golden up and then we silver around it, that could also work as well. I wish we need silver on some other spots as well, so we have to come back with that. I used up all the silver so far, so we're gonna need some more. Okay, let's get the gold out of the way first, and then we'll come back with some silvers once all that has dried up. So I want to make sure we gold up this halo here. Leave the skull intact for now. I think we can get away with a little bit of the action of a silver accenting up gold. Okay, that's a good start. We'll keep going here, as we need to now golden up his trim on each shoulder pad. Okay. So should we cover the underside as well? All right, let's go to the next shoulder pad. Okay, now let's try to do something like this. He's got one skull on, oh, not skull, actually it's just a insignia, so you can paint the centerpiece golden. Okay, because he's a captain, actually, let's go ahead and do the bottom of his hilt. Has a little bit of a metallic tip to it. Let's go throw that in gold as well. I suppose perks of being higher up in the Space Marine ranks. Okay. Let's see if we can get away with putting this skull in gold as well. All right. Same thing for this little key trinket that's on him. All right. And then some last couple spots here. Let's try for the Imperium Eagle on the center of his chest. The wings will be white as always with a little tint of blue on the tips. So take that. And then very lastly, we got one more skull on his forehead here. Just like that. And oh, that's right. One last insignia is going to be on his fist itself. And let's see if we can get that to be golden as well. If the camera can focus on it. There's a little bit of an insignia on in the center part of the back of the fist, which we can accent up in a gold color as well. Okay. Very good. So I think that's all the parts that should be in gold for this guy. So let's switch gears here and start doing things in a little bit of an off-white so that we can start doing some of the wings. First and foremost is going to be the wings on his chest. Make sure it goes over, fills in the gaps, and then the tips will go back over with some Arctic blue, or Arctic gem is what it's called. Okay. Very well. Then we've got almost like a wreath on this side of under his right knee here. Okay. And then we got more wings to do on his forehead here. Very small area, but an area nonetheless. All right. Now I got another part underneath his fist as well. We're gonna have to take care of this. Okay. Very lastly, let's give this a little bit of white as we're trying to do more of a parchment effect onto this little piece that's attached to his shoulder pad here. So we need to wait for that to dry before we do another layer. It's a little bit watery. I'm just pushing the pigment around. So let's try. Okay. We'll keep that for now. We really need to wait for that to dry before I try to put any more layers on top of that. So we can take a small reprieve from our normal stuff as we can now try to do some browns onto the leathers of this guy. So what I'm referring to is that we have some Waffen Brown from AK, and this will be able to get us to nicely decorate the things on his belt in more natural colors. Wow, that's still really watery even though I gave that paint a good shake. That is very watery. Oh well. Looks like we have to call in for a bit of a harder shake to this color for really get everything all nicely mixed up. Unfortunately, these lines of paints don't necessarily have an industrial sized shaker to really even all the paints up. I don't know if that will ever be in the works of any future inventions of things like Games Workshop or other model paint companies to do something like that. That's a better consistency. Yeah, I'm just pushing that paint around. I suppose it's kind of personally one of the worst feelings is that when you have a more watery paint and you try to reapply it before it dries, you just push the pigments around, it doesn't really go anywhere. And you end up with even more splotches of uneven paint rather than actually applying a new coat on top. But that is all part of the patience of this hobby. Okay. Yeah, we'll have to come back once those browns dry. But in the meantime, I just got reminded that I need to go back and apply more of the off-white to the piece of parchment. You know what? Let's actually switch it up a little bit. Where is your Wraithbone? So this is a classic off-white color, Wraithbone right there from Citadel. And this should be able to get us with some of the parchment colors of the purity seals all over this guy. Okay, so we don't need very much because there's not too many purity seals, but there's definitely one on the plasma pistol itself. Okay, we have another purity seal on his back here. Let's get a bit more paint. Okay, that's starting to come together a bit nicer. Now, the next step though is that we're going to need some Arctic Gem over here, our light blue paints here, that will be able to slap on some of the wings as well as the plasma source on his plasma pistol. So to get this all started up here, we need to make sure we get all the ridges on his plasma pistol. Okay. And we can go over a little bit because the reflection of the light from the plasma pistol will go over to that side anyways. So that's all good. Now let's see if we can get over to just the tips of the wings there. That's applied quite thick to one spot only. That's a bit messy. They have to come back to that. You know, I think I need another dollop of Arctic Gem because the one on the wet palette is currently crusting up, sadly. So we got some Arctic Gem back here from War Painters over here. It's the one that we're currently using. Let's see. Some of the Arctic Gem is bleeding into some of the reds on the other side of this palette. But that will have to do for now. Okay. So you're gonna need some more of this. Need to reapply it to this part of his shoulder pad here. Okay. We might as well go for it because we need to wait for it to dry up when it's time. So let's go ahead and get back to it. So the standard effect that we do is that we get some Talassar blue as a contrast paint, and we will apply that across the plasma pistol and hopefully the actual power fist itself. I do like that effect of the Talassar blue on top of the silver of certain weapons. So first off, we need to apply this evenly. Okay, and now let's see what we can do here. So it is if we apply this blue across this, So we get this metallic glistening blue that we can work to make some effects happen from. Now, we can be really brave and do a color shift if possible. So it's already partly there because the paint kind of withers out as we go further from the fingers. But what I'm thinking of is we can take advantage of it, is that we can go ahead and get some Evil Sunz Scarlet. That's a layer paint. This is Citadel's Evil Sunz Scarlet. And maybe, just maybe, we can do a great color shift. If not, we're gonna have to choose something else. That doesn't necessarily equate to much, sadly. All right. Let's see if we can clear some of this up. All right. Well, that didn't work the way I expected for that, but that's okay. Because what we can do is I have one more contrast paint I'd like to try, which is going to be Imperial Fist Yellow. So maybe this can help us along a little bit with maybe getting a little bit of a contrast to go against the blue of the fist here. Or I might just be going off my rocker here and just messing everything up, but we'll see. It might be that second option, but who knows? We'll still work with that for now. And for the time being, we can turn this back over to some Mephiston Red, because we need to work on the body of the plasma pistol, as well as, do I still have, you have enough to work with? Okay. The body of the plasma pistol, as well as the wax seals of the purity seal. Yeah, the wax parts of the purity seals as well. Okay. All right. That works for most of the reds there. Well, one, two, oh no, I missed one purity seal. Of course. One more to go. Okay. You fill that guy in, and that's it for that part. Although I'd really like to try something, if it's possible. Can I get away with it if we really try to add a few lines of Mephiston red in between the fingers of the Power Fist? Or should it be red? Maybe it should be white. All right, you know what? Let's try white first. Or does it need to be Arctic Gem again? Arctic Gem and then white in the center. You know what? I think that's a better idea. Anyways, though, let's go back to some Arctic Gem here. So we need to go back here, get Arctic Gem across those ridges on the Plasma Pistol. Okay. And then let's also spread some around. As part of the reflection of being surrounded by that light blue light of the plasma. Okay. Now, let's see if we can be a bit brave yet again. And really try to control some of this paint line as we go around here. Really trying to work our way in between the fingers of this guy. You know what? I need a bit of a thicker consistency. That wasn't really working. And that yellow isn't really turning out to be much of anything. I like the color, but unfortunately it's not really going to mesh well with the blue that's already set inside the fist. We're just going to go over this all entirely with some Arctic Gem. And we'll keep mixing in a bit of the red, unfortunately. Okay. It's been messy, but we'll accept it as it is for now. The power from the Power Fist doesn't have to be completely symmetrical, I wouldn't say so. All the white dried up. So we're gonna need a bit more white from Vallejo over here. Need some more white paint. Okay. And that will have to do. Okay. Lastly, let's do a couple things here. I want to put silver on this guy's belt and maybe the rock that is the tactical leader rock that he's standing on. We can dry brush a little bit as well. Some gray on top of that silver onto the rock that he's standing on. So first off, let's go get our silver, which is somewhere right here. Give one good dollop of that. And apply that evenly around his belt. Oh, that's right, we need silver on the skull on next to his halo as well. Can't forget about that. apply silver to the skull on the top there. All right, that works for that. And let's move down to his tactical rock that he's standing on. Swap to my number 2 brush here. Let's get to some silver here. Okay, we'll let that one dry there on his rock because we need to dull that out because it's way too shiny right now with all that silver on there. But with a nice dry brush of gray, we should be able to get everything working out just fine. So I have a nice, very cheap synthetic brush, nice flat brush, which cost me hardly anything. Came with some other items from Amazon, but we will go ahead and get this prepared for a nice layer of dry brushing to thin out or dull out the silver there. Where's my gray? Yeah, nice Vallejo's gray here. Load up. Thin that out on a piece of paper towel and let's go. You being here that if we do about this. All right, let's try that one more time. All right, that really does it a little bit. We still get a bit of shine underneath it, but that makes it a bit more realistic of what he's standing on. So that just about concludes it for this Space Marine Lieutenant here with his plasma pistol, power fist, and so far we got 3 guys painted up so far. So we've been live for getting closer to the better part of 4 hours, so that will do it about it for today. We'll be back. Hopefully I can get another live stream in on Monday. Got some things planned for that. So nonetheless, though, thank you all for showing up today, and we'll be back again hopefully on Monday with some other ideas. But we're still on our process of getting these Hellblasters painted. So with that, that'll be it, and we'll see you all next time.